Today we will cover the tuberculosis. There is a Mycobacterium tuberculosis which causes this disease. It is an acid-fast bacilli, and the thing that takes the acid-fast stage in this bacteria is called as mycolic acid. The second important thing about this is that it is stained by the acid-fast stain, is also called as the Ziehl-Neelsen stain. It is stained by boiling carbol fuchsin. First of all, you take the sputum, the morning sputum, for 3 days continuously. You mix it with equal quantities of sodium hydroxide and centrifuge it. The supernatant is thrown and the solid portion below taken, and this method is called as Petroff's method. And then with that you make a thick smear on the slide. You put it on a flame and flame fix it. Then you put boiling carbol fuchsin for 2 minutes. Remove the extra acid fast stain by 3% HCl in case of, or H2SO4 in case of Leprabacillus, but 20% HCl or H2SO4 in case of Mycobacterium tuberculosis. And then you see under a high power oil immersion, you see red bacilli, which is how you see this Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So this is the staining of Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Another thing that you may be commonly asked is how to culture it. And the basic culture is Lowenstein Jensen's media, which takes about 6 weeks to report. So there is another culture, faster culture method, but the most sensitive culture method is guinea pig inoculation. So this bacteria spreads by airborne spread, and it goes and settles in the lung. So here is the bacteria which is settled in the lung. When there is no immunity, for example in case of primary infection, this bacteria would travel to the lymph node and this will calcify. This is called as Ghon's focus, and it's an advantage, is a type of primary tuberculosis. If there is immunity, the bacteria would get surrounded by polymorphonuclear cells. First is polymorphonuclear cells. Then you have lymphocytes and epithelioid cells. This polymorphonuclear cell has engulfed many bacteria, and because of the fat of the bacteria, there are many vacuoles in this cell, and this is called as epithelioid cell. Then you have the lymphos, and finally you have cells which are multinucleated with peripherally arranged nuclei, which are called as Langerhans giant cells. And so this is basically a tubercle, and what can happen in the center is that there is what is called as caseous necrosis, because now the immunity is acting against this bacteria, and it is a delayed hypersensitivity type of type 4 reaction. So there may be caseous necrosis, and this caseous necrosis may calcify, or it may liquefy, leading to pus formation, and this pus may lead into the bronchus, or it may form what is called as a cold abscess, which may track down muscle planes. So we will now outline the muscle planes that the cold abscess can track down, and they are from the cervical vertebra, behind the prevertebral fascia. This is the cervical spine. So there is a prevertebral fascia which is attached to the T4 body. So there can be a retropharyngeal abscess, a retrolaryngeal abscess, and it may track down right up to T4. So this may be in the thoracic inlet. So the first thing is it may go intrathoracic. Then it may track parallel to the brachial plexus into the posterior triangle, into the axilla, and into the upper limb. Then from the other vertebra, the cold abscess tracks parallel to the psoas major muscle, and from psoas major it can be in the iliac fossa, or it can be in the femoral triangle. Now you need a normal septic abscess needs to be drained from its most prominent point, and that is called by a stab incision. That is called as the Hilton's method of drainage. So this is for septic arthritis. But if there is a cold abscess, then you have to go like this in the tissue, so that the pressure of the abscess decollecting automatically closes the tract. Otherwise you will have a sinus. So you have to create a valvular mechanism. This is, you have to go in a zigzag manner, and you have to, so first thing is you have to go zigzag. Secondly, you don't have to have the most prominent point, but the most superior point. And you have to go in a zigzag manner to evacuate a cold abscess. The third important thing is that they may ask you how to reach the source. So if this is the iliac crest, you know that here is attached the external oblique, and the posterior part you have attached the latissimus dorsi. Between the two is the lumbar triangle of Pettit. So this is the external oblique, and here you have from the outer half you have the latissimus dorsi, Inside it has come the quadratus lumborum. From the quadratus lumborum to the internal oblique and transversus abdominis is the thoracolumbar fascia. And so you go through this lumbar triangle of Pettit and you land up inside the ileum into the iliacus and psoas. So they sometimes ask you, how do you evacuate a cold abscess which is in the iliac fossa? So this is the basic pathology of tuberculosis, and one of the important places that tuberculosis can involve is the intervertebral disc. So this is the intervertebral foramen. Here is the spine, and here you have the upper facet. So the upper facet articulates with the lower facet here. This is the interspinous process, and so this forms two vertebra. This is the disc. Its blood supply is common, therefore the deposition of tubercular bacteria is peridiscal. Now, if it is a peridiscal, it can create an abscess here, and it may involve the spinal cord, in which case it is called as Pott's paraplegia. Besides adding anti-tubercular treatment and investigations to diagnose tuberculosis, which includes X-ray of the spine lateral view and AP view, the AP view shows a cold abscess which can be wider than longer when it is called as bird nest abscess, or longer than wider when it is called as pear-shaped abscess. The bird nest abscess is tight, and it is likely to help you in it is tight, and if you evacuate it, then the chances of recovery are much higher than a pear-shaped abscess. So the tuberculosis can thus cause Pott's paraplegia. There is insidious onset sensory motor paraplegia. Stage 1 is spastic gait. Stage 2, inability to walk. Stage 3, inability to raise limb in air. Stage 4, no movement or bladder bowel involvement. So these are the stages of Pott's paraplegia. You will have symptoms of tuberculosis like evening rise of temperature, night sweats. You will have tenderness, which is rotatory tenderness, pressing on the lamina. If you rotate the vertebra, you will have tenderness. You will have angular kyphosis. You may have a cold abscess, but if there is a cold abscess, then usually there is no paraplegia, but otherwise you can have paraplegia. Now, what pathology produces paraplegia? So just remember inflammation. It is edema, it is ischemia, it is sequestrum, it is abscess, it is collapse. So this pathology produces a Pott's paraplegia. Another classification, this pathology produces what it is early onset of POTS paraplegia. Now, this early onset is within 6 months of appearance of vertebral symptoms. Then late onset POTS paraplegia is because of internal gibbous and mechanical stretch. So, if the vertebra collapses like this, there is a internal gibbous and the lamina above and below is pressing the cord forward, and the internal gibbous is pushing it backward. So this 3-point pressure produces stretching of the cord and involvement of the spinal cord. So then everything about POTS paraplegia except ATT and investigation of tuberculosis is just like paraplegia due to spinal cord injury. Another thing is that the common site of POTS paraplegia is the thoracolumbar region, and they ask you why. One, because it is the beginning of the thoracic duct, so more deposition there. Secondly, it is a junction of the two curves of the spine, the kyphotic curve of the thoracic spine and lordotic curve of the lumbar spine. So there is a lot of movement there. Then it is the junction of the moving and not moving area. Thoracic spine doesn't move, lumbar spine moves. So it is a junction, it is near the thoracic duct, the two curves join there, it is the junction of the moving and the non-moving portion of the spine. That is why thoracolumbar spine is most frequently involved. All the rest is supportive treatment and management of POTS paraplegia. Then one final diagram which you have to understand is what are the indications of surgery. So when do you do surgery? When you do decompression. You do decompression if there is no paraplegia during ATT, not responding to treatment, increasing despite treatment. Grade 4, recurrence. Then you operate. And what do you operate? So this is the vertebral body, this is the lumen, this is the transverse process, this is the lamina, this is the spinous process, and we are drawing a thoracic vertebra. This is the rib which is articulated with the vertebral body and the transverse process. So the operation that you do can be remove the rib. So this is costectomy. Here is the abscess. The abscess is here. So if you remove the rib, the abscess would be decompressed. The second thing is remove the transverse process also. That is costo-transversectomy. The third is remove the pedicle. That will decompress the spinal canal. So this is called as lateral rachotomy. The fourth thing is remove the diseased portion of the body. That is called as anterolateral decompression. And when you remove the body, you may have to fill in a bone graft and stabilize the vertebra. The second thing is stabilization is always by fusion, but if it is late onset paraplegia, then you treat it by fusion, not by decompression. So this is about the spine. Now we move on to the hip. So that tubercular bacteria travels to the hip, and here is the hip. And you have a cartilage of the hip, and you have the synovium of the hip, and you have a capsule of the hip. So here is your synovium and here is the capsule. So the first thing is that the bacteria deposits by a triangle, in the triangle which is at the junction of the head and the neck on its inferior border. This triangle is called as Babcock's triangle. Then because of the tubercular pathology here, there can be a stage of synovial effusion. In the stage of synovial effusion, the joint goes into its maximum capacity, and that maximum capacity is in a position of flexion, abduction, external rotation. Now this abduction, if this is the spine and if the hip is abducted, to bring it back into parallel to the body, it has to be brought parallel to the body, the ASIS would become low and this limb will become longer as compared to the opposite limb. So with abduction you always have apparent lengthening. In this stage you have to diagnose tuberculosis, and the gold standard by lymphocytes, by culture, by X-ray chest, by biopsy. You have to diagnose tuberculosis, and you have to treat this stage by traction, ATT, physiotherapy and nursing care. So this is stage 1. The second stage is that there is involvement of the articular cartilage, and when there is involvement of the articular cartilage, movement causes pain. So any movement with articular cartilage erosion would produce pain. Now as it produces pain, there is spasm, and which is the most powerful muscle around hip which goes into spasm? It is iliopsoas. And what does iliopsoas do? It pulls the hip into flexion, adduction, internal rotation. Now you see, if there is adduction on the left side, then the spine will tilt this way, this ASIS will go higher to allow this adduction, and this limb will become shorter than that. So scoliosis, high ASIS, adduction deformity, apparent shortening. So these become linked, and if you want to say that the psoas spasm is because of hip involvement, then there must rotational movements of hip will become very, very painful. So this is stage 2. Then the third is that either the ligaments are damaged or the bone collapses and this head starts migrating up. So if it migrates up into bone, then it is called as wandering acetabulum. And in this there is true shortening, but no telescoping. However, if there is ligamentous instability and capsule is destroyed, then the head can go into posterior dislocation. And in posterior dislocation, there is the same deformity as flexion, adduction, internal rotation. Additionally, there is true shortening, and there is in posterior dislocation telescopy, and there is what is called as the vascular sign of Nara. So, this is the pathogenesis of tuberculosis of hip. Now, in stage 1 or synovitis, treatment is traction and AT. In stage 2, it is traction and ATT, and then if in 6 weeks there is no pain, no deformity, then it is continue. If there is pain, after 6 weeks, then it is continue plus fusion of the hip, which is by Britton's arthrodesis. Now, this Britton's arthrodesis is that if this is the ischial tuberosity in the spine, this is the neck and this is the trochanter, then you do an osteotomy here and you place a graft into the ischial tuberosity through the osteotomy. So this is a graft which has been placed in a subtrochanteric osteotomy, and the hip has got an extra articular fusion with a graft connecting the ischial tuberosity to the distal femur. So this is Britton's arthrodesis, and it is in pain. If there is a deformity, you can do corrective, unacceptable deformity, you can do corrective osteotomy. So this is tuberculosis hip. How would you investigate? To assess general condition, hemoglobin, TLC, DLC, ESR, GBP, blood urea, blood sugar, urinous stool. Assess GC. Then to diagnose tuberculosis, sputum, antibodies, culture. Then to diagnose tuberculosis of the hip, image it by an X-ray, CT scan or MRI, but X-ray pelvis AP view with both hips in identical position would show narrowing of the joint space and wandering acetabulum. So this is imaging. Then you put the patient on traction to correct deformity and ATT. Traction and ATT. Judge the patient again at 6 weeks, and then to assess the immune status or nutrition status, you can do a erythrocyte segmentation rate, C-reactive protein, etc. So this is how you approach a case of tuberculosis of hip. Now the tuberculosis of the knee. In the knee, again it is synovial, articular cartilage, and bone. Synovial, you have a synovial effusion, you aspirate the knee, do a polymerase chain reaction for Mycobacterium tuberculosis, you can do a culture, you can do a AFB staining, and demonstrate the bacteria there. Or you do a synovial biopsy to histologically demonstrate tubercular bacteria. Treatment, ATT and TAT and physiotherapy. In articular cartilage involvement, it's again it becomes painful. Movement becomes painful and there is crepitus and there is narrowing of the joint space on X-ray. Again, the treatment is almost the same, and if there is persistence of pain, you may have to fuse the joint or you may have to do a total knee replacement. In the bone and the ligament problem, the most important thing is that if this is the femur, the tibia would slide backward, will rotate externally and will flex. So flexion, external rotation and backward sliding. That means subluxation. This is called as triple dislocation or triple subluxation of knee. Again, if it is painful, you have to either fuse or do a total knee replacement. So this finishes the tuberculosis of spine, hip and knee. Then in the rib or in the small bones, there can be tuberculosis of the bone in which there will be lytic lesions. There may be a sinus with blue pigmentation and inverted edges. These sinuses have a watery discharge, and in ileum and in ribs you may have rice grain sequestrum. And in the phalanx it is called as tubercular dactylitis or spina ventosa. Treatment is antitubercular treatment and if necessary curettage plus minus bone rest. In all these conditions, you must look at the draining lymph nodes, which may be matted and which may tell you a diagnosis. So this, I think, finishes the tuberculosis of bones and joints.